Hey peeps, hope you're well. I just have one thing to say to you, and one thing only. The Gulf of America. Yeah, Gulf of America. All right. No, I have more to say than that. I lied. I'm sorry. Anyway, you people who are paying attention to the world, you know what I'm referring to. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, I had multiple requests to compile a list of my favorite, as I see it, my opinion, my favorite industrial bands. Someone asked for like a list of 50. And I was like, man, I don't know that I even like 50 industrial bands. I thought coming up with 30 would be challenging, but I did. I came up with 33 actually, and I read those industrial lists last week, and Pitchfork came up with like the top 33 industrial bands, and I thought that was a good idea. 33, like 33 and a third, a record, the RPM. I thought 33 is a good number. But I sat down and I told myself, I'm going to do this list, but I have to think of these bands off the top of my head. If I can't think of that many just off the top of my head, then I'm not going to do. Basically, I'm only going to do a top whatever list of bands that I can think of. And I came up with 33 that I feel should be on a list. I feel strongly enough about 33. Anything beyond that, though, I was kind of stretching it. There are a couple of bands on here I think that are very, could arguably be off the list. But I came up with 33 strong choices. Most of these you saw on those lists I talked about before. But there are a couple that you did not see, like this first one, as you can see. But most of these you've already seen and you'll agree with. And there are a couple that are not on this list that you will disagree with. And fine. This is like I'm telling you straight up right now, right off the bat. There is no Nine Inch Nails on this list. I 100% believe that they should not be on the list. So if you're expecting your generic standard boilerplate Nine Inch Nails video because it's industrial, well, you're wrong. They're not even on my list. And I firmly believe that. I'm not choosing to leave them off the list just to be different or be shocking or something. I truly don't believe they should be there. There are 33 other bands that I think are way more important to the spirit of industrial than Nine Inch Nails ever could make. So enjoy. Gulf of America. Go Gulf of America. And by the way, I'm not interested in talking about the origins of industrial, okay? I mentioned this in my last video. Every single time I do an industrial video, some rivet head douchebag trolls my lists and watches my videos, and he'll say, or he or she will say, they want to get into this fucking phony fevered debate about how industrial started and who came up with the term and where it originated. I don't care. I don't care. There aren't two people on this planet that can agree where it originated anyway. So anybody who claims to know exactly where industrial originated is full of shit to begin with. In my opinion, industrial is a very nebulous thing that kind of came together over the course of years. Someone didn't just sit down and say, I'm going to turn industrial music into a genre. That never happened. So I'm not interested in having that debate. Industrial music is encompassing of a lot of things. That's what makes it industrial. But I think the one through line it has is it has a very mechanical sound to it. What does that mean? You figure it out. But it does have a very mechanized, mechanical, industrial at the very root and core of its definition sound. That's what it sounds like. You industrial fans, you know what I'm talking about. Not getting into the origins of the term itself, couldn't care less. So, those of you who want to have that argument, consider yourself blocked. I love these people that just think that their definition, their black and white linear definition, is the exact definition of what it means. Like they know something that the rest of the world doesn't know. Give me a break. And then I click on their YouTube channel, and of course they don't have their own channel. They've never made their own content. They just like trolling other people's efforts and arguing with them and telling them that they're wrong. Unbelievable. I mean, it's believable, but you get the gist. You know, guys, sometimes 100,000 or even a million things can be right all at once. There's never just one true answer to anything. The black and white shit, it's really tiresome, man. Many, 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 many different things can all be true at once. It's called life. All right, rant over. I'm getting into my first choice, and there are 33 of these. Look at all these tabs I have open. You see these at the top of my screen? I don't know if you can see these, but I have 33 tabs open. And these aren't ranked. I'm not ranking these. I thought of 33 bands off the top of my head. I wanted to pull these guys up because they're one of my all-time favorite bands, and 33 is on the cover of their debut album, so I just thought it made sense. So a couple people, when I talked about those other lists of industrial bands, a few people were really offended that Meat Beat was not on the list. I kind of get why they're not on the list. Meat Beat, the beauty of Meat Beat is that there's so many different things at once. Like, sure, they've made industrial music, but Jack, like the majority of Jack's music, I would classify if I had to, if I had to classify it, because part of what I love about Meat Beat is it defies classification. That's the beautiful thing about it. But if I had to define it, I would put him into more of like the hip hop acid house vein. I don't necessarily think of Meat Beat as pure industrial. The one exception is his early, or the one exception in album form is this, Storm the Studio. This is the one exception. This is arguably, well, I don't think it's even arguable. This is the one time Jack, this is a very noisy album, very mechanical sounding, but it also has a ton of samples and it's got hip hop and techno and all those things that can be mixed into the pot. But one thing Jack did better than anybody, and I don't think anyone's ever even attempted it, even as close as well as what Jack produced. People have tried it, but it hasn't worked. Jack produced it. It's always been better than anybody else. Is that he mixed industrial with hip hop. Bands just don't do that. And if they tried, they sucked at it. But Jack did it. And it wasn't really the result wasn't really any of those things. It was just Jack, it's Meat Beat. Nobody sounds like these guys. So I I told somebody when someone was offended about Meat Beat not being on the list, I said, take that as a compliment. And I kind of feel the same way now. I mean, it was only a week ago I made that comment, but Meat Beat defies categorization way more than any of the other bands I'll talk about, I think. You know what I mean? Jack's on his own mountain. He's on his own island. But yeah, he stormed the studio is and Armed Audio Warfare. Okay. It's kind of a compilation album. It's listed under albums here. It's kind of a comp. But Armed Audio Warfare and then the 12 inches, like Strap Down, Suck Hard, I Got the Fear, God OD. That early Meat Beat shit, sure. I mean, Meat Beats is one of the greatest bands of all time anyway. So um, I can buy that. I'm putting them in my top 33. You guys know how I feel about Meat Beat. I have several Meat Beat videos out there, and I'm putting them in my top 33 list. They should be there. I mean, if we're gonna put fucking Three Teeth and shit in a list like Consequence of Sound did. By the way, somebody mentioned that they put the wrong Three Teeth album on the list. Consequence of Sound put one of their albums at number 44 or something. And someone was like, that album does suck, but they have a better album. I'm like, dude, after hearing the album I heard, I'm never listening to Three Teeth again. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not wasting any more of my life, my precious seconds of life, listening to Three Teeth. So, but Sure, I'll put Meat Beat on the list. Is 99% industrial? It's got flourishes. Satyricon? No. Subliminal Sandwich? No. I mean, in the fact that it's noisy, Subliminal Sandwich, okay, there's an argument that could be made that, yeah, it is industrial, at least influenced by that. So I'm putting them on the list just because Meat Beat's fucking awesome and I love them. And when I thought about it, I rethought it after making my comment about how I didn't really think they were industrial. I thought about it and I was like, yeah, they should be in there because if we're considering other bands like Nine Inch Nails and other fluffy bands like that who are way more far removed from industrial than Meat Beat is, I thought, no, Meat Beat needs to be on the list. So there you go. Closing out of that. Next band. Skinny Puppy, of course. Hey, you know how I feel about Skinny Puppy. Do I need to go on? I've made how many? How many Skinny Puppy videos? 500? I made a lot. You guys know how I feel about the pup that is skinny. Come on. What have I said that I mean I could say more about Skinny Puppy, but absolutely. Arguably the greatest industrial band ever. Sure. Absolutely. There's only one other band that ever breached was able to take industrial and kind of turn it into this pop mechanism, but then not lose any of its credibility. And I talked about who that artist is, and I have a feeling it's probably my next tab here. I think it is. I don't remember, but there are a couple of bands that did that, and Skinny Puppy is one of them. As you know, Rabies is my favorite Skinny Puppy album. After that, it would probably be Vivisex 6, followed by Two Dark Park. I'd probably put Mind after that. Anyway, Skinny Puppy, you guys know this. This is no secret. Okay. I am putting Adrian Sherwood in here. I did not see, maybe, did one of them mention his name? I'm just putting his name in here. This name is absolutely essential to the history of industrial music. And I don't see a lot of people talking about it. Sometimes I just see his name in the middle of a text piece about some album that really shouldn't be on the list. This guy is a focal point of industrial music and the whole scene and how it ended up sounding. With On You Sound, and here's a list. Like, yeah, he remixed Cold Cut, he remixed Depeche Mode, he remixed People Are People for Depeche Mode. He worked with Primal Scream. He did that entire Echo Deck remix thing. He worked with Skinny Puppy. He worked with Nine Inch Nails. He worked with Al Jorgensen. He practically taught Al Jorgensen how to mix industrial style music. This guy is a fucking legend, and I am separating his name as his own artist. He needs to be mentioned. He's more of a producer. He didn't really, he didn't really ever put out his own industrial stuff. You see, he has a list of his own albums here. Huh, his first solo album came out in 2003. That's interesting. But this guy started producing in the late 70s, and industrial artists were clamoring for his tutelage. He's that talented. If you somehow don't know this guy, go look him up. He's worked with every significant industrial artist you can name, and I'm not exaggerating. He is an absolute legend, and I'm putting him on this list because he should be there. What I love about Sherwood too is he not only was part of what created the whole industrial sound, but he did it by accident. He wasn't really trying to create anything. He was just doing his thing. He's known for making disco music, noise music, dub. Dub is really the main thing he did. But he dabbled with disco and dance and house and techno and dub and hip hop and he's done it all. And that's why I think he should be always referenced as like one of the Mount Rushmore guys for industrial music. I don't see that really anywhere, and he absolutely should be up there. Adrian Sherwood. And On You Sound, that was his label. So he produced and released a ton of great shit on his label. I just don't see people really knowing about this guy as much as I feel they should. So Adrian Sherwood needs to be on this list. Pop Weed itself. Is that maybe that's controversial? I don't know. I think they should be on there. This band kind of went through a bit of a transformation. Their early stuff, like Box Frenzy, not my favorite. This is when they started kind of coming into their own. In fact, I think this is their best album. This is the day, this is the hour. I did a video on that. I think I did a video on Cure for Sanity too, right? I think I did videos for these as well. I'm a Pop Will Eat Itself fan. These guys should be on the list. They they were one of those band. They were a pop band, but they also were all kinds of other things. They dabbled in sampling and dance and dub and noise. And I think because of all those things, you kind of default into the industrial umbrella. I'm putting these guys on the list. They should be there. Einstürzende Neubauten. I've talked about these. I've never done a video about anything these guys have done. I talked about them at relative length with those last two videos I made. These guys absolutely need to be on the list. Absolutely need to be there. Um, I'm trying to think of, I mean, I think Collapse is, maybe well, Albert Mensch is, I mean, I think this is the one they chose on both of the lists too, and it should be. This is also really good, the one with the horse taking a piss. Um, these guys were just scary, these guys were a scary, like, OG industrial entity to be reckoned with. They were a force. And every time I think of the word industrial, this band pops into my mind. They are synonymous with the genre and the whole lifestyle of industrial music. You've got to put these guys in there. Top 10 for sure. Throbbing Gristle. I've already talked about why these guys should be in there. Go watch the Pitchfork list I commentated on to get my thoughts on Throbbing Gristle. These guys are again one of the Mount Rushmore bands. It is what it is. Throbbing Gristle and all four of these people that were in the band and all of their little side projects, a few of which are going to pop up here. Anyway, you know how I feel about Throbbing Gristle. I've talked about them. Coil. There you go. One of the offshoot bands right there. Both lists put Horse Rotivator on there. As you guys know, Love Secret Domain is my favorite Coil album, but Love Secret Domain isn't so industrial. I mean, it is and it isn't. Horse Rotivator is pretty much all industrial. Scatology too, and most everything they did, I think, would be categorized and lazily so, probably, as industrial. Love Secret Domain is probably the one exception. That's their one album that kind of stands out from the rest. I think that's why I like it so much. I also love Acid House. I also love techno. I also love ambient. So that's why I lean toward Love Secret Domain. But all this shit's great. Ha- Coil, they're just, they are breaking up. They're people who broke off from Throbbing Gristle. And that's what it is. Seriously, do I need to explain why Coil's on the list? All right, moving on. Chris and Cozy. I'm putting these guys on there too. Part of the Throbbing Gristle family. Um, these guys were on one of those lists. I think they were on the Pitchfork list. These guys should absolutely. I th- I was thinking like maybe I should just say Throbbing Gristle and then kind of branch Chris and Cozy and Coil off from that rather than separating them. But I think the output of Chris and Cozy and Coil warrants that they get put on the list. Look at all this stuff, and it's all good, man. This isn't just filler album shit that they did. These are all excellent albums. All of these. These 12 inches, all of these are great. Chris and Cozy is fantastic. They should absolutely be. on an industrial list. They kind of went off, they became something more than industrial. They, in fact, I would argue they probably are more in the new wave canon. But so what? That's the cool thing about industrial. It can be new wave, it can be rock, it can be ambient, it can be noise, it can be techno, it can be house, it can be metal. That's the fun thing about industrial. It's like as long as you kind of have that core noise mechanical element, you can kind of branch off into this all these other worlds and still have it sound industrial. So Chris and Cozy, as as I explained, I think they're probably a little more pop, a little more um, electro, even, but absolutely industrial. They should be on here. Next, Test Department. Now, this is a band I was surprised didn't make either of the lists. Really? There's no Test Department? Really? There are a couple bands on this list that I will point out I was very surprised with. I'm like, oh, come on. How do you not notice that? How do you not put those in there? My favorite Test Department. I mean, The Unacceptable Face of Freedom, maybe? Ecstasy Under Duress. I mean, listen, if you don't know Test Department, you need to. And why these guys didn't make either list is beyond me. Maybe they just didn't know about them. I can't imagine they wouldn't, but it's possible, I guess. I don't know. Did they not know about them? They should have. Test Department should be in any top 33, at least top 33 list of industrial bands. Go check these guys out if you don't know them. There's no bad starting point, although I would recommend starting out with one of their 80s albums here. I think maybe Unacceptable Face of Freedom is my favorite. I mean, it's hard to say. Any of these places are good starting points, good reference points there. Nitzer Ebb. Listen, I've done videos on them. I don't know if you've seen them. I did a video on Nitzer Ebb. I've talked about Nitzer Ebb very much. Love this band. That Total Age is definitely their most classical industrial album. My personal favorite is Belief. Um, Nitzer Ebb. I think was it the Consequences Sound? I think they put Showtime. They put both of them put That Total Age on their lists, and I think Consequence of Sound put Showtime on there. I would not agree with that. Belief is their best album, but whatever. A Pure Industrial, That Total Age is their best album, but in terms of nuance and all kinds of different influences all converging as one, I think Belief is their best moment. Anyway, you know how I feel about Nitzer Ebb. I'm not going to go on and on about them. I already have. DAF. Again, I think one of the lists mentioned DAF. When I think of like one of those old school original industrial bands, I always think of DAF. They're one of the first. I think this album got put on one of the I can't remember which list it was. And that's a good selection. All this stuff they did in the 80s is worth checking out. But absolutely, DAF. DAF needs to be on this list. Check them out if you haven't. Nurse with Wound. There you go. I think they got mentioned twice, which I thought was kind of lazy. I think they got mentioned twice on the Pitchfork list. Yeah. Um, yeah, they got mentioned on the Pitchfork list. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Um, am I thinking of no, no, no. It was Nurse with Wound. Anyway, Nurse with Wound it's interesting. Like they're a good example of a band that is on the fringe of what one might think is industrial. Like they never were a type of band that had like jackhammer beats and stuff. They were way more noisy and even ambient, even found sound type stuff. But it was always edgy. It was always hard to listen to, and scary sounds, and it's not easy music to listen to. And I think a lot of people associate that kind of approach with industrial music, right? Not easily approachable. And when I think of Nurse with Wound, that's what I think of. I think of music that's tough to listen to, but also is very mechanical in its approach. And I think that's why people think of these guys as industrial, or more specifically, this guy. Um, I don't know. I think, yeah, I was going to say that I say this guy because the band has kind of changed. People have come and gone. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that. I would highly recommend these guys. They're absolutely one of the best industrial groups out there. And the Nursery. I think of Nurse with Wound and In the Nursery very similarly, maybe because they both have the word nurse. But I think In the Nursery is a little more traditional industrial than Nurse with Wound, but nonetheless, they should be put on the list. My favorite, probably Storm Horse. You notice this label too, Sweatbox. We know of the other band that was on Sweatbox, right? Beat Manifesto. That's right. But check out anything they did in the 80s. Again, they were just one of those early influences that I think anybody should be listening to if they're into industrial music. It says here neoclassical Marshall electronica band known for their cinematic sound. Okay. Yeah, I mean they definitely had a lot of symphonic work going on with their music, but it's very strange. I think you absolutely kind of have to throw them into the conversation when it comes to industrial. You can disagree with me if you want, but I think they should be in there. Clock DVA. This is another group that I'm a little surprised that did not make a list. To me, Clock DVA arguably is top 10 industrial band. No question about it. I've done a video on Clock DVA. Look at all these albums. I mean, they were busy. Busy, busy, busy. Again, I've already talked about them. My favorite album is Buried Dreams. I did a video on it. I stand by it. This is one of my favorite industrial albums of all time. Transitional Voices is also awesome. Thirst is one of my favorites. In fact, Thirst might be my second behind Buried Dreams, maybe. Any of these are a great place to start. Clock DVA is fantastic. And speaking of Clock DVA, one of the guys from Clock DVA and Jack Dangers from Meat Beat Manifesto are coming out with an album. I think it's next month. You can pre-order it. Go check that out. Go Google yourself some Clock DVA and Meat Beat Manifesto. But how these guys didn't make either list blows my mind. Clock DVA absolutely needs to be on the list. And what does it say? One of the first groups to arise during the formation of the Sheffield electronic scene. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought of Cabaret Voltaire when I think of Clock DVA, and maybe it's that Sheffield connection. I don't know, but um, they should be in there. Clock DVA, come on, you know I'm right. This is obvious. Front 242. I've made my videos. We all know these guys absolutely are on the list. Period. There are no arguments. They're one of the top industrial groups of all time, and fuck you if you don't agree. I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't agree. Again, I've made my videos. I don't need to back up my opinion here. You know how I feel about these guys. These guys are on the list. Same here. Very obvious choice. KMFDM. Adrian Sherwood again. This early stuff. Adrian Sherwood. Um, I've made it very clear. Naive is my favorite KMFDM album. UAIOE would be a close second. Don't Blow Your Top would be third. I think everything from Money onwards, I don't know. I've never been able to get into all this stuff. I think KMFDM, I've mentioned this before, I know multiple times. They've just kind of turned into a disco band now, which is fine. That's cool. But in fact, I didn't even know they had this Let Go album. I have to go check that out. But I just haven't heard anything from KMFDM in a long time that I have loved. This stuff, Adrian Sherwood, all this early stuff, Adrian Sherwood. And do you see a theme with all these records right here? That's right. They're their best albums in 12 inches. Look at these 12 inches right here. Talk about a run. Check this out. Holy crap. Then this, their TKK moment. Fucking hell. That is a great run. You know these guys need to be in the list. Speaking of TKK, look at this. Yeah, these guys need to be on the list. No question about it. Already done my videos on these guys. You know how I feel about them. They should be there. Everything after Sexplosion, not so much. I can't get into all this shit. I think it's just turned into some weird fetish disco type thing. Can't get into anything they've done post Sexplosion, but these three, I don't know, this Live in San Antonio is not some promo thing or something. Their first three studio albums here all will cement this band as one of the top industrial acts ever. Controlled Bleeding. One of the lists had this, one of them didn't. These guys should be on the list. No question about it. No question about it. My favorite Controlled Bleeding, boy, what would be my favorite? This is going to be a boring answer, but probably Trudge. I know that's like one of their later Wax Trax things, but Trudge is probably my favorite. But all this early stuff, I mean, Core, Curd, this is all good shit. Controlled Bleeding is definitely one of the best industrial bands ever. That's all there is to it. Pankow, where was Pankow on either of those lists? Seriously. How do you leave out Pankow? What are you crazy? Stop it. Gisela, one of the best. And I've done my video on that. Again, if you want to hear my thoughts on Pankow in depth, go find my Gisela video. I did one, I don't know, last year, 2 years ago. I don't know. I've done one. Go check it out. It might be a year old, it might be 4 years old. I don't remember. I lose track of time, but go check it out. These guys absolutely need to be on the list. Freedom for the Slaves. You know who that was produced by? That's right, Adrian Sherwood. You know who did production on Gisela? That's right, Adrian Sherwood. Come on. How do you not know Adrian Sherwood? What's wrong with you? Pankow. Frontline assembly. Obvious, easy. I've done my frontline assembly video. I talked about caustic grip. That is my personal favorite. Pretty much everybody universally disagreed with me. Okay, whatever. Go check out Noise Unit too. That's Bill Lieb's other thing. Um, he's got other things. Go check out his other things. But yeah, FLA, of course. Of course they're on the list. What are you kidding me? They got to be there. Laibach, yes, they have to be on the list. They are not my favorite. They are known to be one of the originators, one of the early industrial bands. Never been a fan. I feel like Laibach is to blame for groups like Rammstein, like their presentation was almost more theatrical and not musical. I think that's one of the reasons why I've always kind of resisted Laibach. I listen to their music and I can't help but feel a little turned off by it, only because of the schmaltz, like there's like this big, almost operatic approach to their music. It's almost not about the music with them, it's about the presentation, about the drama of it. I get that, but I've never been a big Laibach fan. Whatever, sue me. What can I say? But they should be on the list for sure. Cabaret Voltaire. Listen, I think I've been pretty clear about how much I absolutely love Richard Kirk. I am shocked I haven't done a Richard Kirk video. I've thought about it many times. I will do one. In fact, now that I'm talking about it, I will probably do one. I don't know why I didn't do one when he died. I almost did it and I got pulled into something and I don't remember. Life happens and you don't do it. Anything that Richard Kirk does, you need to check out. He is one of the early guys in industrial music, and he is one of the greatest techno and house producers of all time. Richard Kirk absolutely should be on the Mount Rushmore of just putting out awesome experimental music. He's one of the kings, as far as I'm concerned. Everything that Cabaret Voltaire did really up through maybe Johnny Yes No. By the way, Johnny Yeshnow, how you doing, man? Um, Everything he did, he was involved with up through this. I would definitely, maybe the crackdown even. Um, Everything up through the mid 80s basically could be construed as industrial. And then he got to this phase and he started kind of Cabaret Voltaire I should mention Kirk Mallender too. I shouldn't leave him out, but Cabaret Voltaire started kind of going over toward the techno house side of things, more dance stuff. By body and soul, they had pretty much abandoned all traditional industrial sounds and were going straight for the techno house jugular. And good for them. They should do that. They should have done that. These Cabaret Voltaire albums here are some of my favorite techno albums of all time. Particular emphasis on the conversation. One of the best, beautiful ambient techno house albums I've ever heard in my life, which is, let's face it, a Richard Kirk solo album. It came out as a Voltaire album. It's really just a Richard Kirk album. Same with Plasticity and International Language, but that's another video. Cabaret Voltaire need to be on the list. Period. Moving on. Foetus. You guys love Foetus. You guys love him much more than I do. He needs to be on the list. I think Nail was the one that got chosen for both. Um, I mean, again, I've talked about I'm not a huge Foetus guy. I like him and appreciate him. I'm just not on the same level that you guys are. But he needs to be on the list. Jim Thirlwell, Foetus. Young Gods. This is another band. Like, how'd these guys get left off the list? Really? Top 50? Think about it, guys. Go back and read the Consequence of Sound list and look at some of those inclusions, and then consider that the Young Gods were not put on here, or Clock DVA. Yeah, they're not paying attention, or they have other alternative measures. They're trying to force things into the list or crowbar their own agendas in there or whatever. Young Gods need to be on there. Come on now, stop it. This first album, well, the first album, right? That's their best album, I would say. All of these first releases are all fantastic. Anyway, Young Gods need to be on there. Come on, stop it. SPK. I think one of the lists mentioned them. Which album was it? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure one of those lists I talked about mentioned one of these albums. I can't remember which one it was. These guys were from Australia, right? Experimental and industrial noise music group founded. They were credited to have been at the forefront of the Australian, but yeah. Yeah, I drew a blank there. I think they're from Australia, but SPK should be in there for sure. You don't know these guys, go check out any of this stuff. I don't know how easy it is to get, but in terms of just originating a sound, a movement, SPK were pretty crucial. You need to put them in there. Tackhead. I talked about these guys briefly. They were on the Pitchfork list, I think. Again, Adrian Sherwood, Keith LeBlanc. Look these names up, see who they're associated with. If you don't know these names and you don't know Tackhead, you don't know industrial. Sorry, it's the truth. You know what has been fed to you as industrial, but you don't know the facts. Thank God you guys have me. Oh, yeah, I know I'm arrogant, whatever. I'm also right. Tackhead needs to be in there. Come on now. And the things that these guys did. It's also it's kind of not so much about Tackhead per se, it's about these names. Like go dig into these names, guys. And Gary Clayle. In fact, I need to show these guys too. Because this album in particular is what I'm talking about. Tackhead sound system. Anyway, yes, Tackhead. Severed Heads. Guys, nothing? Either list? No mention of Severed Heads? Okay. I don't find that to be a credible choice. So I'm bringing them up. Seriously, if we're talking about the all-time greatest industrial bands and Severed Heads is not on the list, that doesn't make any sense to me. Zero sense. These guys have to be there. All right. What's that? You don't know Severed Heads? Holy shit. Where have you been? Go check them out. They got a little more pop-tastic toward the end here, like Rotund for Success, I think. That was their big album. Had some singles and remixes that were good. I like this album, but you want their true experimental nature? Go find this shit. I don't know how easy this stuff is to get, but go check it out if you like industrial music. I would be shocked if no one, if an industrial rivet head didn't know this band, but if somehow that's the case, Severed Heads, go check these guys out. Pigface, I mean, whatever. We know this. No shock there. I think they were on both of the other lists. I wouldn't. I'd put I'd put Pigface toward the very bottom of the list. I think these guys just kind of took names that were already known in the industrial world and threw them together into a pot and kind of did their thing. But they do need to be on the list. They put out some good music. These guys might even be number 33 on my list of 33. They're just kind of they're way down there, but they should be there. This is a new one, Pharmacon. I know I just discovered this woman through those lists, and I have dug into all of her albums here, and I love them. She should be there, man. What I'm hearing here is fantastic, and I'm mad at myself for not knowing of her. I mean, this album came out 12 years ago now. I just had no idea. Totally passed me by. I even subscribe to the Sacred Bones Records mailing list and buy plenty of shit. I buy other industrial sounding albums like Blank Mass, the guy from Fuck Buttons, I buy his albums. His albums are pretty industrial. They can be. Just totally missed Pharmacon. Margaret Chartier is her name. Well, I love Margaret Chartier and Pharmacon. I am a new convert, and she goes on the list. This is good shit, y'all. If you haven't heard any of this, keeping the torch alive. This woman is. This chick's awesome. Check her out. Dome. This might be controversial, but they should be on there. Absolutely. They haven't had a huge output, but the output they have had should be on here. Bruce Gilbert and Graham Lewis. Do you recognize those names? You should. You really should. They're in another band. I'm not even going to tell you the other band if you don't know. You're going to go look them up. Bruce Gilbert and Graham Lewis are in a band that is one of my all-time faves. They are part of another band that has never produced a bad album in their lives. And these are guys that have been around since the late 70s, and they're still putting out music, and they still rule. They still rock. They are one of the greatest bands that has ever graced our planet. Yeah, these two. They're in another band. Go check them out. Yeah, you're going to pull them up, and you're going to kick yourself for not knowing these names because you definitely have heard of the other band. I've done plenty of videos on them. Oh, look, it's right there. I just gave it away. Oops. Dome. These two broke off from this band here. I'm still not going to say it just because I'm an asshole. They broke off and did their own thing for a while. Colin Newman went and did his solo thing. So these guys were like, fuck it, we're going to go do our thing. And they did. And Dome is absolutely noisy, mechanical, industrial inspired music. And it's fucking awesome. And I think they should be on there. We're talking about bands who helped create this genre that we now know as industrial. I'm not talking about all the rip-off bands that you think is industrial, all that newer new metal horse shit that you've been lied to about. You think you know what you're talking about. No, some of those bands that you like Three Teeth, if you think that's industrial, you've been lied to. You don't know your shit. And that's why I'm here to help you out and guide you along the path. Dome. Swans. Swans is one of those bands I just think that they're not industrial, but they are. Just because they're absolutely individualistic approach. Absolute 100% authenticity. That's what you get with the Swans. And that is always the sign of a great industrial band. In authenticity, uniqueness, honesty. Swans. Absolutely, they should be in there. I think it was Filth. One of the lists put Filth in there, and then was the other one Greed? I mean, you could make an argument that any Swans album could be on there, even their later shit. Even their stuff like this stuff, the big, triple album shit with the 35-minute songs. And um, I think my all-time favorite might be My Father Will Guide Me Up a Rope to the Sky. This might be my favorite Swans album. They came back. They had been gone, how long? Like over a decade, as you can see. They'd been gone for a while and they came back with this, and it was like, holy shit. Not only are they back, but they're better than fucking ever. Swans. And almost the last one. I'm going to open up another one here just because I know you guys are scratching your head and you're thinking, how has he not mentioned this guy in this band? You know who it is, but whatever. I'll get to it. Alien Sex Fiend. Guys, what are we doing? We're talking about industrial music and we're not talking about Alien Sex Fiend? Are we being serious here? Really? Alien Sex Fiend, guys. This is a band who has put out all of this music. Look at all this. They've put out a lot of music. Have they ever put out any bad music? No, not in my opinion. Alien Sex Fiend could be possibly the most criminally underrated industrial act of all time. How are these guys not making an industrial list? Get the fuck out of here. Craziness. Acid Bath. These are all great albums. I mean, if I had to choose my favorite, it might be Curse. Curse. Yeah, I don't know. These guys, they started out as a really noisy, punky thing, and then toward the end of the 80s, they started embracing acid house and they got more electronic, but they were still creepy industrial pop music. They've always been that. These guys are amazing. And I will definitely do a video. So, who was asking? Oh, Liz. Liz was asking me to do an alien sex fiend video. I will. Liz, it's coming. Because honestly, I'm offended how these guys can avoid every list that you see about industrial music. Alien fucking sex fiend. Go listen to them. God, if you haven't heard these guys, where have you been? Seriously. Awesome, awesome band. And I truly believe it. Like these guys have never put out a bad album ever. Their last album here, Possessed, is fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed this album. Check these guys out. We're talking over 40 years of goodness here. Acid Bath might be a close second. I mean, this is in terms of like their legacy albums, back in the 80s when they were like a much more well-known thing. It might be Acid Bath, but Curse is my selfish choice for my favorite. Really cool album. Now I'm leaving one off. You know who it is. I'm just gonna type it in. Obviously. Like I just didn't think this one even garnered a response. You guys know how I feel about Ministry. I think most people when they think of industrial other than Trent Reznor, they think of Al. They think of Ministry. They think of all of the people involved, Paul Barker, Bill Rieflin, um, everybody. Jello, even Jello. We think of Jello Biafra. We think of Ogre. We think of Chris Connolly. We think of the crew, man, the group, Ministry. But it all comes down to this dude here. Somebody made an argument that he didn't agree with me about focusing so much on Al. We should be focusing more on Paul Barker. Come on. Is Ministry going to be what it is without Al? Of course not. Al is the centerpiece of this. He is the brainchild. This is his vision. Um, Popularizing industrial music. That was that wasn't Al's vision per se, but he was on a mission to take industrial and expand it into all of the different worlds of pop. People always turn to Trent Reznor for doing that. In my opinion, it was Al. Al did that. Trent Reznor did not do that. We thank Al for that. We don't thank Reznor for that. So I didn't feel like I even needed to mention this, but of course, Ministry. I've done videos on With Sympathy, Twitch, Land of Rape and Honey. I don't know that I've done the Mind, which blows my mind. I need to do that. I've done one on Filth Pig. I've done one on Psalm 69. I'm gonna go back and look. I don't think I've done the Mind, which is crazy. But anyway, Ministry, of course. Duh. They're the one duh band on here. That is my list. My 33 industrial bands. Yeah, I know you disagree with it. I don't care. That is the way I see it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. I love that you give me your time when you watch my videos. Thank you so much. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I know I can be an asshole. I know I'm an opinionated bastard. I know there are many times you watch my videos and you're like, I can't stand this fucking guy. His opinion is shit. I don't even argue with you. I agree with you. My opinion is shit. It's horrible. Terrible. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.